Story 1. I've been looking for my sister since 2014. I found a way to contact her last night, but I'm not sure how to do it. Backstory/context. My parents got divorced in August of 2014. It was a messy effing divorce, one of the worst I've ever known, and I know quite a few of my friends' parents. My mother took half of my dad's savings, half of his pension. He had just retired after 11 years in the Army, plus 25 years in the police. She was cheating medical benefits during this time. Half of the house, the mortgage on which she never contributed to, and even tried to get half of the compensation my dad was awarded after being hit by a car, ICU medically induced coma, plus in various hospitals and rehab centers from November 2015 to January 2016. Yes, the divorce took almost 2 years. Long story short, she bankrupted my dad. We were on the verge of homelessness for a while. He spiraled into depression, which drugged me into depression. Things were effing bad for us. She also tried to use me and my sister as a weapon against him. She moved to Surrey, a place near London, about 200 miles from where we were living at the time, to be with the man she was cheating on my dad with. My sister, 14 at the time, went with her. My mom tried to make me come too. I wasn't no contact at this point, but I just started a software development apprenticeship at the time, so I stayed with my father. Things were okay. I even went down to Surrey to see them. It was when I was down there that I overheard my stepfather chatting about my dad, a man he had never met, calling him worthless, good for nothing, not a real man, was thrown in there a couple times. She was laughing all the way. Obviously, I was upset. When I got back home, I texted her to let her know that I knew what he had been saying. This led to a barrage from her side and telling me never to talk to or attempt to contact her, my stepfather, or, and this is the only thing that killed me, my sister. I happily obliged with the first two. I carried on talking to my sister through Facebook, saying things like, "I will never not love you. You'll always be my sister." She said similar things back and said she missed me. I went to message her one day and she'd blocked me. I got a text from her saying that the way I spoke to my mom and stepfather was disgusting and that they had been nothing but amazing to me and her. When I first read it, I thought it was weird. When my dad got the exact same text word for word, despite not saying anything to either of them, I knew it was my mother pretending to be my sister. I texted her back something along the lines of, "Your BS has always been easy to see through, Mom's name." I didn't get any message back. Now's not the time to go into it, but after many drunken conversations with my dad, I found out my mom was always emotionally abusive and a total narcissist. When she found out I tried to kill myself, she mentioned in a letter to another family member that I should have tried harder. I never want anything to do with her again. The issue at hand, as mentioned above, my father was bankrupt. He had no money left to fight for custody of my sister. I know he'd do anything to see her again. Going through courts is no longer an option. We don't know where they live. We don't have the money. We don't even know if any of them are still alive. Until yesterday. My girlfriend and I were scouring the web for any online presence of any of them when she found a Facebook profile for my sister that was created around 2 weeks ago. It only has one profile picture and the privacy settings are on pretty much maximum. You can only message it. She sent me the link to it and I'm blocked. However, given what happened with the text message a few years back, I'm inclined to believe that's in part due to my mother. Maybe I'm being stupidly naive and my sister really doesn't want anything to do with me. So here's my dilemma. Not only has my sister been cut off from me, she's been cut off from her entire family. All her aunts, uncles, and grandparents are not allowed to contact her lest they corrupt her, mother's words, into seeing me and my dad again. I can message my sister if I create a new Facebook account, even if it's just to let her know whatever she's been fed about mine and my father's feelings about her are lies, and that we still love her. Even if it's just to let her know that her nan thinks about her every day and she could die happy after just one phone call from her. The issue is, I don't want her mother intercepting the message and making things worse for her or us. I'm sure her account is heavily monitored. I might sound crazy to a lot of people, and I know there's two sides to every story, including this one, but I promise you on my own life, living under my mother is like living under a dictatorship. Your thoughts aren't your own. It's horrible. She will start university in September, I assume. I think the best way to do this is to message the account around October time. The thing is, I don't know if I'm emotionally ready to be told to F myself by her. My dad's therapist has said there's a very real possibility my sister grows to become like my mother. Part of me is ready to accept that fact as closure, part of me wants to believe that would never happen, and part of me thinks I should just leave it alone. I'm really at a loss for what to do. For 4 years, I've been looking for her. Now that I finally found her, or at least an online presence of her, I really don't want to F anything up. What's the best way to go from here? This is heartbreaking. That mother sounds awful. No matter how bad a divorce is, any parent who uses their children, like weaponizes their children against the other partner, immediately a bad parent in my book. Because divorce is so hard for kids already. And to add that kind of guilt and pressure onto the kids just to get back at a spouse that you have a problem with makes you a bad person. A really, truly terrible person who needs to think about what they're doing and seek help. And the fact that after they're apart, she's bad-mouthing the dad and stuff. I don't care if the dad does suck. It's still your daughter's dad. You don't talk like that about them. You don't badmouth and everything. You maybe try and educate them to avoid making the mistakes you think they've made or something, but you don't do that kind of stuff. That is something that just truly awful people do. As far as for what this person's gonna do, I think they have the right idea. Wait until that she's more alone, going off to university or whatever, and send a message that's just very open and honest. Don't try and persuade her. Don't try and attack the mother. Just focus on the one thing that truly matters in this situation, and that is that you love her and you miss her and you just want to talk. I hope it goes well. Story 2. Boss capped my commission on our most in-demand vehicles because I'm not doing extra work. I realize that this story could absolutely be current, but it's not. Another thread reminded me of it, and I think it absolutely fits here, so here goes. Back in 2014, I was selling cars. Ford, specifically. For those who aren't car buffs, both the Mustang and the F-150 were getting ground-up redesigns for 2015, and Ford had just announced that there would be no Shelby Mustangs or Raptor for F-150s for 2015. Instantly, we were fielding several calls a day about these vehicles, and almost overnight, the inventory we had came with a $10,000 to $20,000 market adjustment due to demand. Our GM loved both vehicles and traded for them whenever he could because he loved chatting about them with buyers. So we had 21 Raptors and 6 Shelbys still on the lot when I sold a ruby red Raptor extended cab at $10,000 over sticker the last week of the month. Both are crazy numbers for the less than 200 new cars we sold per month. With the trade, I was due about $4,200 in commission, but my check was about $1,700 light. Come the first Saturday morning meeting after payday, we were told that commissions on such vehicles would be capped at $2,500 retro to last month per a previously ignored provision in our pay plan. There was much grumbling, but management stood firm, citing how incredibly easy Raptors and Shelby deals were. They weren't wrong about that. There was no such thing as a test drive until the deal was done. You could absolutely drive the car before you bought it, but only after we had a signed buyer's order, credit app, and the deal had been submitted and approved. They were generally in and out in under 45 minutes, if not an hour. But still, dealership gets free money and doesn't want to share? Cue malicious compliance. I talked to several other salespeople who to a man were peed, and we colluded. I whipped up a little Excel macro/widget that would take the invoice price/holdback, add in pack and whatnot, and spit our sales price that would produce an exactly $2,500 commission. I sent it to every salesperson we had, and everyone used it. It only took 3 signed buyer's orders with seemingly arbitrary numbers for the desk to figure out what we were doing and call another meeting. That meeting was basically management yelling at us and the entire sales staff calmly saying, "Remove the cap or you'll never see another signed buyer's order that exceeds it. F you." The cap was lifted 3 days later. I love this because the one reason that you go into commission sales, which is rough. I've talked previously about how I used to be in commission sales, selling TVs and appliances and stuff, and that work is hard because you only make a living if you sell enough. But the way that they draw you in, the way that every company draws you in is basically, but you have limitless earning potential. Oh, depending on how good of a salesperson you are, you can make as much as you could possibly desire. But then these companies inevitably love to pull bull crap like this, where they're just like, "Oh no, you've made too much money. We don't want to give you that money," because they want it for themselves. Because a lot of these companies are greedy as crap. And they hate when the commission people are making too much of that money, even though that's the whole reason, the whole draw of commission sales. And I just hope every owner of a company, every boss who tries to pull stuff like this ends up losing it all and becoming destitute and realizing that their greed only serves to make them just focuses for my hatred. That was very disconnected and disjointed. I'm just that mad about it. Blah. Story 3. Coworker won't respect a student's new name, so I won't respect hers. Context, I am a high school teacher. About 3 years ago, a student and her parents came into school just before the beginning of the year. This student had attended our district since kindergarten as Jacob. Now at 15, she has come out as trans and wanted to be known as Janet. She had the full support of her family and, together with them by her side, sat down with the administration before the year began to help figure out how to handle the transition at school. Overall, it was pretty easy. Janet did not have a PE class and was not an athlete, so locker rooms weren't an issue. She was obviously not comfortable using the boys' restroom and knew a lot of girls would be uncomfortable with her using the girls' restroom. An agreement was set up with Janet's full participation and acceptance that she could use these single-person restrooms in the clinic or main office. The only issue was her name in our grade management system. The way the law worked in our state, students' educational records, which our grade management system was considered a part of, had to be in the student's legal name. We could not change Jacob to Janet without a new birth certificate or legal name change document. Since Janet was not legally transitioning yet, a workaround was found. In the grade management system, there's a place where we can put notes about students. Usually they're reserved for things like, please contact mom on her work number during the day, or dad may not pick students up without mom's permission. They weren't official records and were just used to keep teachers, administrators, and staff aware of important issues regarding that student. So, to help Janet, a note was placed that read, Jacob wishes to be known as Janet. Please refer to her as such in all communication and interaction. Then, school started. Most of the kids had no issues switching from Jacob to Janet or respecting her new identity as a girl. Gen Z is great that way. The teachers all made the switch with only minor hiccups. A few of the older teachers misnamed her or misgendered her out of pure habit of having known her for years, but a sincere apology and quick correction kept things running smoothly. Janet was happy, her parents were happy, everything was good. Until the second semester. At the end of fall semester, Janet finished a one-semester elective class with one teacher and was switching to a one-semester elective class with Old B, a notoriously difficult woman to have to share oxygen with. Old B was about 5 minutes from retirement and 10 minutes from the grave based on her constant complaints of health issues. She was also stuck in her ways and refused to change her routines, opinions, or habits. Old B was also widowed and had recently begun seeing a widower who worked in our maintenance staff. This is important. Right before Christmas, at the end of fall semester, Old B and the widower maintenance man got married. As with many newly married people in the world, she went about getting her name changed throughout the school, payroll, computer system, door nameplate, etc. She was no longer Old B Jones, now she was Old B Smith. One day, shortly after second semester started, Janet came to my class, which she had right after she was with the newly renamed Old B Smith, looking as though she had been crying. I got the class started on an assignment and pulled Janet into the hallway to talk. There she confided that Mrs. Smith kept calling her Jacob, despite half the class correcting her and standing up for her. Mrs. Smith apparently hand-waved away the mistake by saying that she just forgot and would try to remember next time. This went on for weeks. Every time Janet was in Mrs. Smith's class, she'd refer to the students by her former name. Every time she did, the students would correct her and remind her that the student's name was Janet, not Jacob. Every time she was corrected, they'd just say, I forgot, I'll try to remember next time. Students, including Janet, went to administration to voice complaints. Admin talked to Old B and reminded her of Janet's transition and new name. Time and time again, she was asked to please be respectful and refer to Janet appropriately. Every time, Old B hid behind her age and habit, saying, I'm trying, but I'm an old lady who can't change habits easily. I'll try, but it's just an honest mistake. I may have been willing to buy this excuse if it weren't for the fact that another teacher, who I am close with, told me that Old B was getting on her high horse in the teacher's lounge one day and confessed that she had no intentions of gendering Janet appropriately or using her new name. He was Jacob for years, and the system says he's Jacob, so that's what I'm going to call him. So it's time for my revenge. You don't get to disrespect students and get away with it. As a gay man, it's especially personal to me when LGBT students get disrespected. But since old B wants to play, I'll play. From that day on, I only referred to her as Mrs. Jones instead of her newly married name of Smith. I made sure to do it loudly and in front of students, too. When she'd correct me, I'd just say, "I'm sorry, it's just a habit. I'll try to remember next time." It infuriated her, but there wasn't much she could do. The added bonus was Gen Z's inherent love of F around and find out. Without me involving a single student, pretty much about half the student body forgot that old B had gotten married. Of course, they all promised to try to remember next time. It was glorious. Every time someone called her former name, old B would get peed and rant about people disrespecting her. She tried to get admin on her side, but the nice, if a bit spineless principal just said, "Well, I'm sure it's just a mistake. No one would intentionally call someone by the wrong name." For the rest of the year, she fought a losing battle about respecting her new name. I left that school for other reasons over that next summer, but from what I was told, she fought that battle until she retired this past May, coincidentally, the same year Janet graduated. First off, good for Janet. We here on Mainly Facts fully support the trans community, and we do not support old B, Mrs. Jones. I hate the excuse where it's just like, "Oh, how am I supposed to remember? I'm old." You remember all sorts of stuff, and as this person has very clearly demonstrated, people remember when you change your last name when you get married. It's not that hard, is it? At least it shouldn't be. Also, I don't care. I'm sure every time I bring stuff like this up, there are going to be people in the comments who are going to be like, "Oh, it's their right, this and that, blah, 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 blah." No. Okay? Just refer to people how they tell you to be referred by, okay? Don't just demand that you get to, you're pushing your own beliefs on them. Even if you don't agree with people being trans, which, why? Because no. But if you don't, you can still just quietly just accept it and move on. Why is it such a big deal? Why can't you just call them what they want to be called and just not let it be an issue for you? Why do some of you have to make this such a big ordeal, some like hill that you're gonna die on? No, I'm going to disrespect this person who's living their best life because I don't like it and I'm a piece of garbage. Story 4. Killed a tow company with one simple phone call. Several years back, I went to work for a towing company. It's about all I know how to do other than paint cars, which is drastically affecting my health. The pay was pretty decent, but we had to share trucks, and the boss felt that he knew where we needed to sit in order to get the best calls. This is important for later. Several months in, I realized I was not making the type of money that I should be making. So I took the opportunity while I was sitting in a parking lot one evening to start researching the laws pertaining to employees in similar positions. He was kind of an a-hole, and the trucks had transponders so that he could see if we had them idling with the air conditioner on on a hot day, or idling with the heat on a cold day. He was always calling, complaining about something if the wheels were not turning. During my research, I discovered that if he was requiring us to sit in a certain parking lot, street, or any location of his choosing, then we were entitled to be paid an hourly wage, not just our commission. The technical term was engaged to wait. However, if he allowed us to freely roam around while we waited for calls, we were not entitled to hourly wages, and we were therefore considered waiting to be engaged. I never mentioned this to him, but I did start taking note of my time. Another month or so goes by, and he decided to start coming down on me for tiny little BS. Things that ordinarily wouldn't even matter, such as, I forgot a pop can in the cup holder. He actually had a screaming fit about that. At this point, I was tired of working there and had already found another job, so I decided it was time to put my plan into motion. I called him up, told him that we needed to have a conversation about my final wages and that we could meet at his convenience. Upon entering the office, I laid out my argument, explained the state law, and told him I expected to be paid for the hours that I was on the clock but not freely allowed to roam looking for work or able to do things of my choosing. He told me in no uncertain terms I would not be paid for that time, as that was agreed to upon my employment. I did not bother to argue, as I had already had my next step planned, so I took my final check and I left. The following Monday, I made a phone call to the State Labor Board where I laid out my case to them. Needless to say, they were very interested in what was going on. In the end, they came to review his employment records and speak to the drivers still working. When he got the bill of what he had to pay us, it was too much for him to afford, so he sold the trucks, his boat, and a lot and went out of business. I never got the money owed to me in full, only a fraction, but the satisfaction of knowing the law just a little better than he did and watching it all burn was pure bliss. I have not one single ounce of sympathy for the owner of that business, because if he's doing that crap and he is, robbing people of their time and money in this way, illegally, then yeah, he deserves what he gets. I'm sorry, but if you're a person who is trying to screw over people and wring every penny out of them that you can, and you're gonna do it illegally, I hope you lose everything. I hope that it just wrecks your life for a period of time, hopefully long enough that you learn a friggin' lesson and maybe become a better human and treat your employees as if they are also human. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.